Okay. So we've been asking the last 2 or 3 weeks, what are we doing here? What is our purpose, if there is one, in a sense? Well, of course there's a purpose. We wouldn't, none of us would even attempted to have tried to get on the spiritual path. But why did we have to get on it? Why did we get on it? Why did we go to church? Well, as kids, some of us may have been unconsciously driven to church, whether we had a choice in the matter or not. Some of us may have been raised Catholic or Methodist, Presbyterian or Buddhist or Muslim. It doesn't really matter. We were taken to a place of worship, as it was known. Or some people might not have, and it was just more of a family affair. Maybe it was taught yoga. Maybe it was more of an intellectual process. But is there any difference between being a scientist and being on this path? Is there? There really is no difference. They have different words. We don't wear lab coats, or we could wear robes. And realistically, weren't the Buddhists and the early Christians or the early Jews, weren't they just scientists trying to figure out what heck was going on? Realistically, right? I mean, what's going on? And some people had, relatively positive experiences. Others had relatively negative experiences. But in the midst of all that, there was always this wave effect of up and down, up and down. And part of what we're trying to do is get the wave to not be so violent. It's just to be kind of a very smooth, oscillating experience. So that's basically it. That's what we're attempting to do. We're just scientists, examining the data. Or if we go to church, we got up there and the preacher says, y'all need to stop sinning out there. Whatever it is. But what is sinning? Well, missing the mark. That was the whole term, the Aramaic term of sinning was basically just missing the mark. Is that you set off on a journey, and you didn't quite get where you thought you were going. Or, as they would say it, the animal nature just tries to survive. And that's basically all church and science is studying the animal nature of the human. And the animal nature, relative to the consciousness we're trying to get to, relative to human consciousness and beyond, is that what is sinning? Well, just acting like an animal. That's all. If you watch animal behavior, just watch squirrels. One squirrel goes and, puts some nuts in one part of the earth, and then another squirrel comes along, grabs it, and takes it. Isn't that what humans do? Realistically? Well, they try not to. It was very interesting. We were watching something the other day, and there was a Catholic demonologist who came on was talking. And somebody was asking the demonologist if humans in general were good. And he kind of looked at her and kind of shook his head, and he's like, no, not really. It's just too easy to be bad. Well, think about that. It's like, it is really easy to be bad, isn't it? And it seems like it's really hard to be good sometimes. And you think about that. It's like, well, why is that? Well, if we examine the human mind, the subcortex area, the neocortex, is not that much different than animals. So we kind of have what do they call that? Everything's stocked against us. It's how do we get past that wall of being good? I gotta be good. Okay. The best part about that is that on this path that we're here on, us people here are not looking to be saints in the saintly word. We're actually looking for balance. Now, I'm not saying, go help an old lady across the road and then go rob a bank, as that's balance. No, that's not what I'm saying. Because that's too much of an extreme. That's too much of an extreme. No, it's more like a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Well, not about that. Because if we try to force our dog into submission, that you're going to be good all the time, every day, every second, how long does that last? And then, of course, there come those gray areas. It's like, well, God, I gotta get across the street and it's a double yellow line. There's nobody around, so I'm just gonna cross the double yellow line. Well, isn't that considered a sin? Well, it's a human sin in a human society sin, but is that a sin against God? No. Because what if God intuited you? Oh, you need to turn left right here. Well, then the human law has nothing to do with God's law. And what's God's law? Well, get in the light, get into love, do what he tells you to do. And yes, there are laws that are written in the Bible, but they were also indicative of how impossible they were to meet. It's like Jesus said, there is only one commandment. Love God like he loves you, and love everybody else, just like God loves you. Can humans do that? Can humans really love like gods do? No, not from the animal consciousness. No, they don't have that ability. I don't think a squirrel's going to come up and give you a hug. A squirrel's going to come up to you and say, "Do you know you need to let go of that? That's not good behavior." No, it doesn't have that faculty. Now, humans sound like they do. Now, here's where it gets troublesome in human society. Is that religion was created. And what was religion created for? To try to get people out of their animal consciousness. To move them to that comes a little later, but in general, get them to stop acting like animals. So realistically, it was just laws. Humans needed laws to follow. And at the time, people were more spiritual, so they called them God's laws. Now later on, it became more the church's laws at that point. And therefore, because the church was created by God, according to them, that we're supposed to follow those rules. Now, is that wrong? No. It's like we said, as children, we went to church, or we learned how to, and then we got to a certain point. But how do we get past that point? Like in religion, how do we become a born-again Christian? Can we get that from the self? Can the self be a born-again Christian? We're going to have a problem here. Because the self operates out of the parietal lobes. And it only sees lack. It only sees problems. That's all it sees. So if you're experiencing problems, just cleaning things up, fixing things, or sometimes worse than that, that's coming from the parietal lobes. We're basically between a combination of that and a subcortex in the mind. Mix those two together in the body. That's what we call the experience of selfhood. So where do we need to go? The frontal lobe. The interesting thing about the frontal lobe, it does not have a strong sense of self. I would almost wager to say it doesn't even have that experience. That's why they used to say that the child and the master both experience the universe the same way. Because neither one of them have a sense of self. One is pre-self, one is post-self. So it has a sense that it remembers what self was like, and basically it's a different experience, yet they don't have a sense of self. So how is the born-again Christian going to experience the kingdom of heaven? Well, what do they call that? Well, a baptismal. Becoming one with the light. So you're the offspring of the light. And from there, you experience what we would call the kingdom of heaven. Is it the kingdom of heaven? Is the kingdom of heaven a place? No. It's not a place. Unfortunately, where religion gets halted there is they get stuck in what we call the upper astral plane, which can be heavenly. It's where we take ourselves to do our meditation. And we can keep ourselves there. But you are not that. We can take care of our little doggy better that way. So being born again, becoming enlightened, has nothing to do with attainment, with achievement. If one experiences nirvana, that's just a state of your energies that are integrated. The same as experiencing the kingdom of heaven. That your energies are integrated. So how do we get there? How do we get to that spot? Well, the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been talking about being a dreamer, about waking from that dream, and then becoming totally awakened. Then we go to bed at night, we dream. Do we wake up in the morning and are we still in that dream? No, we have a different consciousness at that point. But here's the mistake that we make, is that the other dream didn't stop. The subconscious dreaming is continuing. You just now think you're awake. Because now that you're thinking, well, I am not dreaming anymore. But isn't it interesting that our fears come to light in our dreams? And a lot of times those same fears follow us in our conscious dream. So it's still there. Until we do what? Start to let go. Start to get them out of the well. Start to get tools. Because look, our brain is not that dissimilar to an animal, like a dog. And we need to train it. And we have to, because if you don't train it, it's still untrained. And all of us here have, of course, elements of that. All of us here have mastered something. We just have a tendency sometimes to glaze over that which is really important. And which is interesting. It's like, okay, think of it this way. What wakes us from that dream usually at night when we're having a really bad dream? When we get so frustrated that we can't get past it, or we get so scared, or we get that, and something snaps us out of the dream. And we may still be shaking from it or whatever it is, but we know it was just a dream. And that's waking up. Eventually, you start to see your conscious world as just a dream. That there is no out there that you have not projected. And then we can call yourself fully awakened at that point. That you see the world as a psychological experience. And at that point, you can just play by the rules. You can, just go about your business. And what is that business? A citizen of the universe, a born-again Christian, a real bodhisattva. They're all synonyms. A yogic master. So, how do we get there? Well, that's why we call this the Sudden School. Because if we look at it this way, that right here, right now, you are free, then it can't be the body, it can't be the feelings, it can't be the mind. So that is our whole goal, is to wake ourselves up from being entrapped by our subconscious, our consciousness, to become super conscious at that point. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to have to train the dog, train the mind, get it to think differently. Get it to think differently so much that eventually you go, wait a minute, I don't need this stuff. I can let it go. So then we start letting go of all the nasty bits, things that have disturbed us from our peace. And when we had our peace last year, we talked about that. What keeps us from that? Experiencing perfect peace. So we go, wow, this is disturbing me in my perfect peace. So I let that go. Now let that go. And then you keep letting go, and you keep letting go. And George used to bring up this experience about letting go of letting go. Well, why do we need to do that? Why do we need to let go of letting go? Well, eventually we realize that you don't need to have anything. The you doesn't need to let go because it doesn't have any pockets. It's as there are no pockets, like a fresh born baby. No place to put anything. You couldn't even try. So why do you need to let go? Things just arise and they pass away. They arise, pass away, and you just witness it. There's a Greek story that, of course, I'm going to butcher but it's just coming to me to say it. But basically, there was a god. I think it was Narcissus, or whatever. Like I said, I'm going to butcher it. But the point is that he went to look at his reflection, or was it a she? I don't remember. Whatever it is, looked in the pond and got so enamored with it. And what happened? So that's basically like us. We forgot that we don't have a face. That we looked in the mirror and said, oh, that must be me. And we started doing our daily rituals and whatever it was. And to say that we don't have a face based on what we're talking about, is that accurate? But in relative to this thing we're staring at right now, yeah, it's true. You don't have a face. You don't have a body. You don't have emotions. You don't have thoughts. You got enamored with what was going on in front of you. This thing, whatever the things are, you got enamored with that. And that's waking up. That's us trying to defuse, ungrok. And realistically, you can't sin. You can't even make a mistake. Ironically, you can't even do anything right either. You can't. Now you can have your bodhisattva, your body, do something great. You're going to have it do something bad. But you cannot. Now the nice thing about meeting at night is that we can reflect on the day that we just lived. How many times did we take credit for how we felt? Oh, I'm mad, or I'm sad, or well, it wasn't right, or I'm glad, whatever it is. Now, is that accurate for you? No. How much did we think? Oh, wow, that's a tough one. Yeah, for humans, the thinking part of addressing that they don't recognize when they're thinking. That means there's an entire religion based on that. Zen Buddhism, Taoism, all about letting go of one's thoughts. Well, even Jesus brought it up. He said, "Have no thought for what? Tomorrow." So he did it too. He was also a Zen Buddhist, wasn't he? He was like, have no thought. You mean had his stick out, right? Bop the disciple in the head. Stop doing that. And okay, here we go. What about his healing? He would heal the person in front of him, and then he would tell them to what? Stop doing what? Sinning, which is basically thinking. Isn't sinning and thinking the same? So look, it's across every religion, every belief system, that thinking, desiring, wanting is the root of all suffering. Jordy looks like he's ready to jump out the window there for a second. Where are you going, Jordy? He's trying to get rid of his thinking. Exactly. Wouldn't that be nice just to go with our thoughts? And there are religions out there who think that blanking the mind gives them freedom. Going to the void is freedom. Sequestering themselves. Becoming ascetic. They think that's what's freedom. No. Hopefully in that process that somebody will have an aha at that moment and go, oh, wait a minute. That experience was created in my mind. That wonderful experience I created. That hellish experience I created. And then eventually, they just go sit under the Bodhi tree. Sit under the Bodhi tree. And just be. And just watch the mind and its thoughts and its machinations. Watch the soul and its emotions. Watch the body just be in its perfection. Watch the universe. It's your eternal entertainment. The eternal movie. And then we let go of that. And then we're in perfect peace. Neither coming nor going. Will snow wither. All that happens out in the movie. Did you know that realistically when it comes to life, that there really is no death? That death is just life playing dead? It has to be. Where would it go? How if nothing could be created or destroyed, where is death? Well, how is that even possible? It's a psychological experience that we believe in death. So we see it. Cancel. So what is the old adage? If I tell you my beliefs, I'll tell you my life experience. If I tell you my life experience, you know what my beliefs are. So it's all psychological. If right now, if your upper chakras are not open, if you look for God, will you find him? Her, it, non. No, it'll just be black. And that's why people got on the path. Because they were looking to what created them. They didn't understand what happened. Because they fell from grace. And eventually, whoa, someone saw the light. And they said, hey, I saw the light. Oh, okay, we'll follow him then. And then they wrote it down. And then they had a road to drive down. And then they wrote them down and became books, scriptures. It wasn't like this, somebody wasn't walking along one day and some traveling salesman came along and said, well, here's a book. This is from God. Here you go. Now that may have happened later when people had created it, but didn't start in the beginning. Moses was completely confused when the tree started talking to him. And what did he say? He just said, I am. That's not I'm sure he's like, what kind of name is that? And he went back there and said it, and it became the words we use now. But that's because he communicated what he heard, what he thought he heard. But is that accurate? Does God have a name? No. We dedicated a sound to him. And I'm only going to use the him part just for communication. We dedicated a sound to him. Even Aum, we credit to God. Is that accurate? Is that, if you go into the light right now and hear the tones, we go, oh, that's Aum. No, we go, well, there's a pitch. There's a hum in that frequency. And then someone came down and said, Aum. And they checked all their chakras and realized each one of them had a word associated with it. And wow, so that must be how everything works. That's how it works? Come on. We're more advanced than that. That's what it looks like. That's the activity we witness from there. But if you think about it, and everything started here, everything should be, well, we'll just put it this way right now. All the way down. Wouldn't you think someone who could change water to wine or raise the dead is probably coming from that frequency? Have to be. So, how do we enlighten ourselves until we wake up? Well, we pay attention. That's number one. We study the self. What does it do? We watch it. We watch what does this thing here do all day long? Well, what does it do? Just pay attention. What's it holding on to? What is it afraid of? What is it resisting? What does it want? Pay attention to that. Excuse me. What's it doing? Reflect on your day. And don't be judgmental. Say, oh, I need to stop doing that. Or, oh, congratulations. Either one is not good. Congratulating oneself for being a good self is just as bad as chastising it. Based on this path. And yes, sometimes we need a good swipe in the ass. That's true. Good. Wake up! And the universe has a tendency to do that if we're not paying attention. Well, then what do? Well, we go, all right, well, I guess I need to stop doing that. Or, oh, maybe I need to start doing that. Or maybe I need to... Well, you guys seem like you're humming pretty good. So I think we should go into our meditation. So let's make ourselves comfortable.